Hello everyone, I'm News 2 Meteorologist Alex Libby. Today we're talking about the chance of tornadoes in the month of September. And as you can see from this graph, I've showed this graph several times. Today, we're in the middle of September, the least likely time for tornadoes. We know, being in Middle Tennessee, that tornadoes are most common in the spring months. March, April, and May, we've recorded hundreds and hundreds of tornadoes. And remember, this graph is showing data of confirmed tornadoes going back to 1811, so a really long time. So it might be hard to believe, but yeah, we've only recorded a dozen tornadoes in the month of September, just 12 tornadoes. In contrast that with April, our most active month, that had 221 tornadoes in April. So earlier today, I talked to the meteorologist in charge at the National Weather Service in Nashville, Chrissy Hurley, and she says it all has to do with the timing of when we see the most ingredients favorable for producing tornadoes.
And so for us to really get in that setup of having, severe weather and tornadoes, we really need that clash of cold air and warm air, up against us over the region. Since we're not in that time frame yet, we're really not seeing the transition of seasons aggressively. Any kind of storm that we do get, there's likely not enough wind shear and not enough moisture to really get things going in the atmosphere for severe weather or anything tornadic.
And like she just said, these are those ingredients needed for tornado production, needed to produce a tornado. The first one is moisture. Then we have instability, a lifting mechanism, and a wind shear. Let me explain each and every one of those. So moisture is pretty simple. When it's really humid out, when it feels like you're walking through soup, that's when we have a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. That is favorable and helpful for producing tornadoes, but you can't get tornadoes unless you have all four of these. The second one is instability. That's really just the air's ability to lift into the atmosphere. Typically that happens when it's really warm and humid at the surface, and it gets cooler as you go higher up in the atmosphere. The next one is a lifting mechanism. That's super simple. That's just an area of low pressure, or more specifically what we typically see, a cold front associated with an area of low pressure. But that cold front, it kind of acts like a snowplow and shovels through that moist and unstable air. It shovels it up into the atmosphere, causing those strong thunderstorms to produce. And lastly, and probably one of the most important ones for tornadoes, is wind shear. Wind shear talks about the winds at all levels of the atmosphere. Strong winds at the surface, at the mid-levels, and all the way up to the jet stream. Also, what helps produce tornadoes is if those winds at all the levels are at different directions. So maybe an easterly wind at the surface, a northeasterly wind higher up in the atmosphere. And it all has to do with what time of year all those ingredients are present. So here is the winter, spring, summer, and fall. During the spring, you can see all four check marks. That is the most common time when all four of these ingredients are present. In the fall, especially the early fall like we are right now, because we can see some of these ingredients come together towards the end of fall in November and early December. But typically in September and October, all four of these ingredients really aren't as present. And that's because in the fall, we're not quite into that time of year where the jet stream is a little bit further south. It's still, not going to be seeing that wind shear at all levels of the atmosphere. And also, it starts to get less humid because in the summertime, we have really, really high humidity and moisture. And we're seeing it right now where it's still warm, but we kind of lose all that really humid air. And then in the summer, we have all of the moisture and instability we need, actually a surplus of that, but we're missing the lift and the shear. And in the winter, we have tons of lift and shear, but typically we're kind of missing the really humid air and the instability. But in the winter, it doesn't take much. You can just get a little bit of that humid air from the Gulf, and we have so much lift and shear in the wintertime that we can see some strong tornadoes. But here's a map that shows when tornadoes are most likely across the country. And yes, here in Tennessee and even in Kentucky, April is that month where we see the most tornadoes. So definitely take advantage of the quiet time that we're enjoying now, because it's going to start getting more active as we get into the winter, but especially as we head into the spring.